Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something massive, a complex and often invisible intersection that literally dictates global security. We're going to be looking at the staggering economics of the U.S. aerospace industry, the intricate web of global partnerships that actually sustain it, and a looming financial wall that is forcing a radical rethink of the future of military aviation. So, let's jump right in. I want to hook you immediately with this number, $835. Now, according to a 2025 report prepared by PwC for the Aerospace Industries Association, the total GDP contribution of the U.S. aerospace industry in 2023 equated to roughly $835 for every single person in the United States. I mean, that is a staggering per capita footprint for just one industrial sector. Let's break down how we actually get to that number. Section 1. The Aerospace Economic Engine. The sheer financial gravity of this sector is absolutely immense. Just in 2023, the industry generated a massive $545.2 billion in total economic output. And we're not just talking about building airplanes here. It's a major catalyst for national prosperity. The whole shebang encompasses everything from commercial aircraft manufacturing all the way to guided missiles and space vehicle propulsion. And you know, that kind of money translates directly into human terms. That output supports nearly 1.6 million full and part-time jobs across the country. Over 545,000 of those jobs are directly provided by the industry itself. That is a massive, massive portion of the American workforce relying on this specific economic engine. But here's where it gets really interesting, the multiplier effect. The aerospace sector doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? It procures raw materials like titanium and carbon fiber, software, complex logistics services. And because of these deep, intertwined supply chain linkages, every single direct aerospace job supports nearly 1.9 to be exact, additional jobs elsewhere in the U.S. economy. This whole operation also requires an incredibly highly skilled workforce. Over 40% of aerospace employees hold a bachelor's degree or higher. To put that into perspective for you, the national average across all U.S. jobs is only about 29%. So this industry genuinely requires and sustains top-tier engineering, technical, and business talent. Which brings us to Section 2, how foreign sales work. Because honestly, the domestic economy is really only half the story. When we talk about international defense trade, there are basically two main paths. You have direct commercial sales, or DCS, which is where a country goes straight to a manufacturer like Boeing or Lockheed Martin. But the other path, FMS, or foreign military sales, is a government-to-government transaction. Ultimately, the U.S. Department of State decides which major sales go through which channel, and they heavily weigh national security and foreign policy objectives when they do. Now, the crucial thing to understand is that FMS isn't like buying a car off a lot. It is a grueling, multi-year process. First, a partner nation has to determine a need, let's say replacing an aging helicopter fleet. They then submit a letter of request to the U.S. government. After a rigorous review and congressional notification, the U.S. responds with a letter of offer and acceptance, which is essentially the contract. And it's only when that is signed that the actual program begins. Let's move on to Section 3, the hidden benefits of FMS. So why go through all this bureaucratic red tape? Well, because the strategic payoffs are just immense. To really grasp the financial weight of these partnerships, consider this. The U.S. recorded $55.4 billion in arms sales in fiscal year 2019 alone. That is tens of billions of dollars flowing directly back into the defense industrial base we just talked about, funding R&D and advanced manufacturing. These partnerships create massive strategic ripple effects across the globe. When allies buy American, they end up using our tactics and training, creating built-in interoperability on the battlefield. But economically, it's an absolute lifeline. These sales keep production lines active and maintain that cleared, highly skilled workforce. And crucially, by bumping up the total number of units built, FMS creates economies of scale that actually lower the per-unit cost for the U.S. taxpayer. It's a win-win. And here is a fascinating, kinda lesser-known benefit. Foreign partner funding can literally pull the future right into the present. Countries will sometimes throw down money to accelerate specific technology enhancements on the platforms they're buying. This gets advanced systems like upgraded targeting sites or missile warning systems developed and fielded way faster, which directly benefits American pilots in the cockpit too. Okay, so we have this incredible self-sustaining loop of domestic manufacturing, global sales, and cost sharing, right? But what happens when the price of the next generation of aircraft becomes so astronomically high that even this massive economic engine just can't absorb it? That brings us to Section 4, the NGAD cost dilemma. So, NGAD. That stands for Next Generation Air Dominance. It's a highly classified program originally intended to replace the F-22 fighter jet, but the program has recently hit a massive financial wall. Previously, it was expected to cost multiple hundreds of millions of dollars per tail. But recently, Air Force Secretary Frank Kendall completely anchored the crisis when he stated that the F-35, which costs roughly $80 to $100 million, is the upper bounds of what they actually want to pay for NGAD. He essentially wants to slash the price of a sixth-generation fighter to a third of its projected cost. Because of this sticker shock, the Air Force instituted a hard pause on the NGAD contract, which was actually supposed to be awarded this year. They've rapidly assembled a blue ribbon committee of former generals and stealth experts to completely rethink the requirements before the 2026 budget submission. So they are really racing against the clock here. The big question is, how on earth do you cut hundreds of millions of dollars out of a cutting-edge fighter jet without eventually losing to your adversaries? Let's dive into Section 5, Rethinking Air Superiority. To get that price down, the Air Force is considering some major design sacrifices. We're talking about potentially reducing the payload, shrinking the range, or even moving from 2 engines down to just 1. But, a shorter range is only possible if they can also develop a stealthy, next-generation air refueling system. Think of it essentially as an invisible gas station in the sky just to keep these jets fueled near the fight. This represents a fundamental paradigm shift for the military. The traditional method was basically to stuff the biggest radar, the most missiles, and the absolute best sensors all inside one single hyper-expensive platform. The new approach, though, it's called disaggregated. That means taking all those capabilities and spreading them out across the sky. The radar might be in one location, while the munitions are flying in another. And to make this disaggregated model work, the Air Force is leaning heavily into CCAs, or Collaborative Combat Aircraft. These are semi-autonomous drones that cost roughly $25 million each. By transferring mission equipment and functions off the manned NGAD fighter and onto a whole swarm of these cheaper, quote-unquote, optionally attributable robotic wingmen, the central manned aircraft finally becomes affordable. Which really leaves us with a massive question to ponder today. We started out by looking at a $545 billion economic engine, an engine built entirely on manufacturing massive, exquisite platforms and selling them to allies to lower costs. If the future of air superiority requires breaking those exquisite platforms apart into cheaper autonomous drone swarms just to survive budget constraints, how will that micro-level cost-cutting eventually ripple out to reshape the massive macroeconomy we've built over the last century? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning what's on the horizon.